aka JARDER, my real name. MC for seriously for about 7 years now. I run a record label called Breaking Records, which is an independent label in New Zealand. Got a few crews under our belt, plus I'm a member of Insomniacs and Oddballs. Well, I got into hip hop strictly from musical point of view. You know what I mean? Like when I started listening to it, like in like like '89 and that, I'd never seen breakdancing or had a grasp of graffiti and that, like as being a hip hop thing. So for me, strictly, it started off as a love for the music of it, and I guess from there on, like obviously I've learned a lot about the culture from my involvement in it, but I've never really been one to believe that you have to take that eye of it being a cultural thing, like I've got no problem with like someone who doesn't even like hip hop at all, like maybe buying into like doing graffiti or something like that. I don't expect them to listen to like hip hop music and have to wear hip hop clothes and stuff like that. Like as a cultural argument, I think it's just like, I don't know, an identity crisis for some people maybe, and I can understand why, like people who were founders of it want their like their claim to it and that. I mean that's like a different story, but for people to say, oh, you're hip hop and you're not hip hop, or if you're real hip hop you'd support all the elements of hip hop, and that is I think it's all just bullshit. Of the African American stuff, like like of the original stuff from the Bronx, is that is definitely like when it first came over, and that well, I mean, it's always going to have like a big part in hip hop. The streets in Auckland and that all talk and the slang that came from overseas, and like everything, the way we dressed, like the hand styles, like in graffiti and that. I mean, apart from like like South Auckland streets and that, like the style they use out there, which is like probably more a New Zealand kind of thing. But even that is kind of taken from like the West Coast scene a bit. Other than that, pretty much all the influence comes from New York, and like people even now these days, still look to New York for what is going to be the next thingy. So yeah, I mean it's got a massive influence. I think definitely. Well, at the moment in New Zealand, well, we have a bit of a monopoly because there's not really any other labels that are influenced like focused on the artistic side of things. Like pretty much all the labels in New Zealand are focused on making money, and the artists they sign are the artists who most like best emulate what is being done in America and that. While like we always, like most of our artists like are always trying to like push like the boundaries, look for something new, look at things from a perspective of hip hop on a worldwide community, not just like saying we got the best, we got the best dude who sounds the most like this guy from America, but more like we like got our own place in hip hop, like that we could take our stuff over to the States and like they'd be like it wouldn't sound like, they wouldn't go, oh hey, that's a cool imitation of him, that it would just be something new. Tourette's, who is like real anti-con styled, like real avant-garde, just it's not something you could compare to any other MC, because he's like, he takes like his poetry and like he uses his own accent and his own like beliefs and stuff, and doesn't compromise it in any way to make it more acceptable for people to want to listen to. Like pretty much put it down to three groups really. I mean, the first group that really got me into hip hop would be NWA, and at the time, I mean, I just thought it was the most rebellious shit ever. I mean, I just wanted, like, I didn't even really think about it being the music at all. I was just more excited. I mean, I was real young at the time and excited by like the use of swear words and things. I used to just listen and be like, can't believe they said that. I had a Eric B and Rakim tape back, Eric B and Rakim tape back in like 1990, but then I mean up until like 5 years ago I wouldn't have even known who Cool G Rap was. It's like I mean, we were in New Zealand, we'd only got like little bits and pieces, and it is until like the last few years with the internet and just global communication on a whole's changed so much that you really like just get opened up to so much more stuff. But I mean, back in the day, I mean, you got hip hop albums that were 2 years old and they were like fresh. It's it wasn't like we were on the heartbeat of what was going on. The thing is like, you know, Scribe had his album. It went real big. There was a lot of labels around the same time, like Dawn Reed and Dirty and that, who were starting to like build up, you know, reps, and at the same time hip hop, you know, like I think it's pretty much on a global scale, like around, you know, the millennium, like probably already in America it was already, you know, the biggest selling music. But I know, because I used to stay over in London too, I know like same diff over in London around the same time. It's just like hip hop seemed to just all of a sudden be the in thing. And you know, 5 years ago, you'd walk into like, you know, a supermarket and it would be like, you know, Ace of Base playing or whatever, I don't know, but it's, you know, just some pop music. And like these days, it's like you can't walk into any kind of like store without hearing like hip hop playing in the background. While like, you know, like more than 5 years ago, maybe like 7 years ago, and that it was just like such a frowned upon music. Like everyone hated it, and now like adults don't even realize that it's just like so, you know what I call adults. Sorry. Like older people, the older generation, you know, like, you know, that used to just frown upon it, don't even realize that it's just like completely, you know, in every part of their lives now. And I think when Scribe blew up, a lot of the labels started putting in heaps of money into their, what, you know, what was going to be their Scribes. I mean, you look at like the big day out. The last 3 years we've had a hip hop stage, and this year it's the Boost Mobile New Zealand music stage. You know, it's because you look at the hip hop acts which are selling now, and they're not. It's like groups like Fat Freddy's and Solar Rosa and that are the group outselling the hip hop now. And it's, you know, it always happens. I mean, over time I've seen it like time and time again. Hip hop comes up and it goes down, comes up, goes down. It like gets terribly cheesy, and then like everyone, you know, like when it goes back down again, everyone's like starts getting into the groundbreaking stuff again, like trying to find that next thing. And then once they find it, everyone like looks at them and follows it, you know. And it's just a trend with pretty much everything. I mean, clothing, whatever. It's just another phase thing in a way in New Zealand, because I mean, like up until the last few years, hip hop over here has always been a gangster thing. I mean, like most people didn't even really like pay attention to East Coast since like, you know, from like the 90s right through to the millennium. Everyone was about West Coast acts like Tupac and, you know, all the Death Row acts, and pretty much just gangster rap. NWA, I mean, like NWA, I mean, was, like I said, was a big breakthrough over here. And because we were so slow to catch up, like people still, you know, rap like Bone Thugs and Harmony and that. And when you look at like the hip hop community, that's maybe like the people really involved in the community, like the real hip hop community, that's probably only about 5,000 people. But the most people that are actually out there who like buy the music and stuff, or even just listen to it, or like that you would identify as being like hip hop like people, they're, I mean, more influenced by what is the gang culture, you know. I mean, and that's kind of like a mix between our own gang culture and the gang culture from America, and it's just kind of evolved. I mean, you look at all the streets and that. I mean, yeah, the usual suspects. I first met Sire just from ciphers and stuff, like you know, like freestyle ciphers outside clubs and that, or like we'd get together and have them in like garages and stuff. And he was just young, maybe 14 or 15 at the time. And he was real talented for his age, so I asked him to come and do some recording with me, because I just bought a microphone, and he didn't have one. And he came over and brought his older brother with him, who was Quest, and Quest was in a group called Riders Alliance at the time. And they recorded a track with us, and it was real cool, and we just like kind of came friends from there. And then their group, which was Quest and Bishop were Riders Alliance, they joined with Sire and formed Usual Suspects, and that was around the same time that we started breaking records. So I mean, naturally they just jumped on the label, and then I mean, that's pretty, they've just been with us since then.